Hey everybody, this is my Angelicus Loach, or I bought it under the name Botia. And today I want to talk about loaches. I'm having an issue with one of my loaches in another one of my tanks, and so I've been shooting video about it. I've been getting a lot of comments from different viewers. I've been doing a lot of thinking about my loaches, and I decided today would be a good day to shoot a video about them. It's been a while since I've really spent any time talking about my loaches. It may not be overly apparent if you watch my videos regularly, but I'm a really big fan of loaches. They're actually one of my favorite fish, and I have quite a lot of them. Not only do I have a lot of just individual fish, I have several different species of loaches. And they're all similar, but they're all unique in their own right. And I've had experiences that don't always necessarily line up with what the general consensus seems to say. And that's why when I shoot videos about my experience with fish, it's just that. I don't shoot species profile videos just for the simple fact that that kind of information is just readily available. If you want to know what water temperature and pH, etc., you don't need me to tell you that. You can find that anywhere. What I will tell you is what my actual experience with having this fish in my tank is. That was always the more valuable information to me when I was looking to buy fish and learn about new species, was what is it like in your tank? You know, I know what the books say, but what is it like in your tank? And in my case, these loaches have not always behaved in the way it says in the books. So, for example, when I first got them, my very first loach ever was an Angelicus loach. I don't know if it was this particular species, but I got one of them. I bought it on a spur of the moment. I had no idea what it was. It was really cool looking. I actually got it from the big chain pet store, and it didn't do well. It was lethargic. It just laid on the bottom. Little side note, if you're new to owning a loach, you will probably have a few moments of panic until you get used to the fact that they sleep lying on their sides, and they will literally float around in the current and rock around in the current. And many a new loach owner, if I may even probably say every new loach owner at some point, has their heart skip a beat because they think they've got a dead loach in their tank only for it to wake up and swim away. I still have to stop occasionally and take a second glance just to make sure one's sleeping and not dead, because they really look dead when they lay on the bottom and they sleep. Just part of their charm. They're really, really cool fish. They're really interesting fish. So that's all this one did. I got it. It laid on the bottom. It did nothing. It didn't eat. It didn't do anything. So eventually I did some research and I found out that they are a grouping fish. They're gregarious. They need to be in small groups of their own. So I wound up buying 5 more. I made a little school of 6 over in my 29-gallon miscellaneous tank, and almost instantly, literally within a few minutes of the other ones going into the tank, the original one perked up, began acting differently, began socializing, moving around the tank, and everything was completely different almost immediately. So that was my first lesson in some fish really do need to be in schools, whereas some fish is just recommended they be kept in schools, but, you know, it's not going to be the end of the world if they don't. There are some fish that really do need to be kept in schools, or it will take a toll on their physiology. You know, it'll make them sick and they'll wither away eventually, and that's what was happening. So I got him into a group. Everything was going great. I fell so much in love with them. And then, I'm not sure what happened, but over about a 36-hour period, this was several years ago, 5 of them died and left me with 1. I don't know if this is the original one or not. As I said, this is just one of the remains of the 6 that were in the tank. And I wound up buying some more of a different kind. I wound up getting some striated Botias, or zebra loaches, and they are now in my 29. I had 6 of them originally. About a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, I lost one of them, but the other 5 still remain, and they're still just their loachy awesomeness. They dart and dash around, and they interact with each other, and they're curious and interesting. Just fantastic fish. But again, they're kept in a group so that they interact and they do their things. So eventually I wound up getting a red-tailed loach. And the red-tailed loach turned out to be a little different than the other ones. I put it in this tank, and it immediately sort of went into hiding. And I found out that the red-tailed loaches are not necessarily as friendly as some of the other species. And I didn't worry about it because it just kind of stayed hidden and stayed reclusive, and it never really bothered me, and I always just took it to be a little more aggressive species of loach. And so I wound up buying some skunk loaches, and I've got 4 out of the 7 that I originally had. I still have 4 in here. And I was in love with these skunk loaches. These were my favorite fish for a long time, and I used to recommend them to everybody. And then suddenly somebody told me, you can't have that many of those in that tank. They're really aggressive. They'll fight constantly. And I started hearing that from more and more people, and so I looked it up and looked into it, and sure enough, the general consensus seems to be that skunk loaches are one of the few loaches that you really don't want to get because they're not very friendly, they don't like to be in groups, they're aggressive, they can be nasty to other tank mates, etc. Yet I have never had a moment's problem with my skunk loaches. I love them. I think they are the coolest little fish ever, and I've never had any problems with them. So I stopped recommending them to people just on the idea, that wouldn't be the general consensus necessarily if, other people didn't have that experience. And I'm not talking about just hearsay. I'm talking about when I look at reputable sources, I go to Fish Base or Seriously Fish or wherever, and, I can read those kinds of accounts, and I get the same thing over and over and over again, that skunk loaches are fairly aggressive as far as on the scale of aggression in loach world. So I don't recommend them to anybody anymore, but I really do love my skunk loaches. I have great experiences with them, never had any problems. I got some clown loaches. My clown loaches I never really had any issues with. In both tanks, I had 2 tanks that had clown loaches, and I put 2 in each tank. So I had 4 clown loaches. In both tanks, one loach grew considerably faster than the other. So, not really sure what to make of that, but I wound up getting 2 more, and now I have 1 small clown loach in this tank who does fine by himself. He interacts with the other loaches. He interacts with the skunk loaches. He interacts with the Angelicus loach. And it doesn't seem that I need to have a group of the clown loaches for him to be happy. That's always been my experience. My experience has been that loaches don't need other loaches of their own species necessarily. Like this Angelicus is in here by itself, species-wise, but it certainly interacts with the clown, and it interacts with the skunk loaches, and I've never had any problem with it being in here by itself. It's been in here for years like this, and you can see it's not dejected. It doesn't just lie on the bottom. It eats just fine, and that's because it's got company. It's not the same species, but it's the same type of animal. It's got other loaches to interact with. My clown loaches are the same way. My skunk loaches interact with other loaches. But that red-tailed loach never did. It always just hid. Whenever it came out, it would go after the food really aggressively. It would just lash out at anybody that was near it. It would grab some food and then it would dart back into hiding. And that's all it ever did. Never interacted with other loaches. So I was told, and I've always been under the impression, that that's one of the few loaches that is not gregarious at all. We'll go over to the tank where I've got him now, and we'll see if we can't catch a glimpse of him. So I was under the impression that they were not gregarious at all, but since I've been posting videos and I've been showing my gudgeon here, who's getting, I'll just say he's getting a little beat up in here. a lot of people have been telling me that I need to have multiple specimens. I need to have a group of these red-tailed loaches in here, or else it won't be happy. And I kept saying, no, that's not true. They don't, they like to be by themselves and so on and so forth. So enough people have said it that I started doing some more research this morning and looking into it. And I am seeing just that it's saying that they should be kept in groups of their own kind, 6 or 7, 10 of them would be better. So apparently where the difference falls with this loach is it really does want to be with its own kind rather than in a group of loaches in general. It wants to be in a group of red-tailed loaches. So I'm not going out and buying 4 or 5 or 6 more red-tailed loaches. I've actually never seen these on sale other than the one time I saw that one. He's in here somewhere. They're burrowers, and now that I've got him in a sandy tank, he's probably burrowed down. The last I saw, there was an opening right here, and I think he's burrowed down under those rocks right now. But I'm not buying more of them. I've never seen them on sale again since I bought that one almost 5 years ago. I want to get it out of this tank. I have to get it out of this tank for the sake of that gudgeon. I don't want to see my gudgeon get, beat up any worse, and I don't want to see it get infected or anything else from these injuries. If you're not familiar with loaches, they have little retractable, they're called subocular spikes, and they are in little pouches right underneath their eyes, and they can flick them out at will. And a fairly large loach like the one in here, when I moved it, it was, the clown loach, which was a similar size, it's got caught up in the net, and I was impressed by the size of them. I would not have wanted to have that thing in my hand. If it had thrashed around, I would have been bleeding profusely. If not, I would have actually needed stitches. These were some serious spikes sticking out of this thing's face. So presumably the red-tailed loach has something similar. And you can see the damage on my gudgeon there is testament to that. So I don't know what to do. Do I get it out of here and get rid of it? Do I put it back in the gourami tank and just let it burrow back under its log and go back to living the way it was living? I've considered moving it over here into this tank where it's got some large clown loaches that it could interact with. That piece of wood you're looking at right there is a large cave underneath of it. I can stick my whole hand and forearm down underneath of that. I stick the entire gravel vac under there. This piece of wood is more or less cup-shaped under there. So plenty of cave space under there for it to hide if it wanted to be reclusive. I don't know. I don't really know what I want to do with it yet. I really need to get it out of that tank. And I feel like if I do I really want to put it back in another tank? Because if I really decide to get rid of it ultimately, I'm going to have to catch it back out of another tank if I put it back in one. I've considered simply putting it in this tank for the time being, just as like a holding tank, because there's nothing in this tank at all, and I can just put a couple of more rocks in there to create some caves. I could put it in there and leave it alone. But I know me, and if I do that, this tank will probably just sort of get stuck with that fish in it. I'm having a hard enough time getting over. I'm stuck, getting on to my next step of getting my brackish tank set up for my red-clawed crabs in this tank. So I think if I put that loach in there, that would just be it. That would be the end of me ever hoping to get my red-clawed crab tank set up. So I don't want to do that. So I don't know. But that's been my experience with my loaches so far. I love them. I've never had problems with them. They've always been gregarious. They've always interacted with each other. They've always interacted interspecies with each other. Even my loaches that were said to be aggressive, my skunk loaches, I've never had an issue with them. And then I moved that red-tailed loach over into this tank, and wham, he's suddenly really, really aggressive. Now, perhaps he was less aggressive in the other tank because there was other loaches in there with him. I don't know. Maybe now that he's in a tank that has no loaches in it, he's getting really nasty, and that's why I'm starting to see, this amount of damage I'm seeing. Any way you slice it, I've got to make some sort of decision today. I've got to get him out of that tank, and whether it's going to be into a bucket, and then down to the fish store tomorrow, or it's going to be into another tank, I don't know. I'm going to have to wait and see. But I feel like I've rambled long enough. This was supposed to be a video about loaches, and I feel like I've gotten into just sort of pontificating about what I want to do with my tanks. So I'm going to wrap that up and say thank you for watching, and make sure you're subscribed if you want to follow along with the continuing saga of wherever this stupid red-tailed loach ends up. If you're subscribed, you won't miss that. So thanks again for watching. Don't forget, this one is my purple spotted gudgeon tank, and I'll see you real soon on the next one.